She was left at the altar in a dress she made herself, abandoned for being too much of everything. No family, no home, just heartbreak in heels. Until a widowed billionaire opened his door, and his heart, not to rescue her, but to witness the woman she'd always been. What began as survival became something deeper. Healing, legacy, and a love that didn't rewrite her story. It handed her the pen. Hello family, welcome to True Life Stories. Please subscribe and leave a like for us, it means the world to us. Also share this video to your friends and loved ones, and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. The silence in Willa James's bridal studio was the kind that wrapped around your chest and squeezed. Golden lamplight flickered against satin-covered mannequins. Bolts of fabric leaned against the walls like ghosts of gowns never finished. Pins glinted quietly on the floor, scattered during a last-minute hem adjustment. The faint smell of lavender steam and warm starch hung in the air. And Willa stood in front of a full-length mirror, barefoot on cold hardwood, wearing a wedding dress she had sewn with her own 2 hands. It was beautiful, ivory silk with hand-beaded lace at the cuffs. Not trendy. Not flashy, just simple, soft, and kind. The way he said he liked things. She'd added tiny pearl buttons down the back, not because Rick would notice, but because she loved detail. She always had. Her eyes searched her reflection, looking for the magic. That spark every bride was supposed to feel. That flutter in the chest. That moment she'd seen 100 times in her clients, when they realized this was the one. But all Willa saw was a woman trying to convince herself. She placed her hand gently over her waistline, smoothing the fabric. The curves were still there. Soft, full, unhidden. She hadn't tried to disguise herself. Just soften the truth. Just enough to feel worthy. The mirror offered no reassurance. She turned slightly, angling herself to catch the light differently. It didn't help. All she could see were years of almosts. Almost loved, almost chosen, almost accepted. Then the sound came. Sharp and small. Buzz. Her phone lit up on the counter. Just a text. A tiny thing. A vibration and a flash of light. But Willa knew, somehow she knew, before she even reached for it. Rick, I'm sorry. I can't do this. The rest of the message was just noise. Something about not ready, and not how I pictured my life. But the words blurred in her mind like spilled ink. She stood still for a long time. The hum of the lamplight filled the space where her heartbeat used to live. Her phone slipped from her hand, clattering to the floor, screen face up like a quiet betrayal. He wasn't coming. Not tomorrow. Not ever. And the worst part wasn't the heartbreak. It was the embarrassment. Willa had told no one but her best friend Darla that Rick had proposed. She hadn't wanted to jinx it. Hadn't sent invites. Just quiet plans. Quiet hopes. A quiet love. She had prepared herself for the possibility that he might not stay. But not like this. Not in a text. Her chest tightened as she walked to the back room of the studio. Her fingers trembled as she removed the dress, delicately, like it still deserved care. She laid it on the table like a broken promise. Then she sat on the floor. And she cried. Not loudly. Not dramatically, just soft, shuddering sobs into the fabric of her knees. The kind of grief that comes from not being surprised anymore. The kind that says, I should have known better, but I dared to hope anyway. Outside, the Atlanta sky rumbled with thunder, as if matching her mood. She grabbed her coat, shoved her heels into a tote, and walked out into the rain, the street lamp reflecting gold on her skin. She didn't call Darla. Didn't hail a car. She didn't have the energy to explain. And that's how she ended up, hours later, sitting under the awning of a closed cafe near the edge of Buckhead, wedding dress still stuffed in her bag, hair wet, and soul bruised. Cars passed. Nobody stopped. The sound of Elijah's laughter echoed down the hallway like sunlight filtering through a dusty room. Marcus Langston looked up from his laptop, blinking as if the sound had broken a spell. Dad, you gotta see this. I made her bald, the boy shouted, racing into the study with his tablet held high. Marcus leaned back in his chair, stretching slightly, the leather creaking under his weight. You made who bald? My character on Roblox. I gave her the same haircut as Uncle Reese after he used Mom's clippers. Marcus chuckled, deep, low, involuntary. Man, you better not let your uncle see that. He's still sensitive. Elijah hopped up onto the leather couch and curled his legs beneath him, tablet still glowing. Marcus set his laptop aside, closing it with a quiet click. The boy's energy always made him feel lighter, but it came with the ache of remembering who used to be there to match it. He let his gaze drift out the study window. Beyond the tall pines that lined the estate, the Atlanta skyline shimmered faintly in the distance, all glass and steel and promise. The house, nestled behind wrought iron gates and security cameras, sat on 6 acres of what Marcus often called peace disguised as property. It was too big, too quiet, especially after sunset. You already eat? He asked, running a hand across the neatly shaved sides of his head. Granny made oxtails and grits again, Elijah said, shrugging. She said you need soul food before that big meeting. Marcus smiled. His mother always believed business sense and seasoning were connected. You liked it? I had 3 plates, Elijah said proudly, tapping his belly. Granny said I'm going to turn into a whole oxtail if I don't slow down. That sounds about right. Marcus pushed off the couch, offering Elijah a fist bump. Go grab your shower. It's almost 8. Elijah groaned. 10 more minutes? 10, Marcus said, already back at his desk. But no electronics in the tub this time. Fine, the boy muttered, walking out dramatically with shoulders sagged like he was carrying the weight of the world. Marcus leaned forward again, but this time he didn't open the laptop. Instead, he stared at the photo on his desk. A woman in a mustard yellow sundress, curls caught mid-laugh, stood between him and Elijah. Her smile was radiant. Free. Naomi. 3 years gone, and she still had a way of silencing the room. He reached for the small jade pendant she used to wear, now hanging on the corner of a frame. His fingers brushed it out of habit, a small, grounding ritual. The world had watched Marcus Langston rise, from South Atlanta public schools to MIT, to Silicon Valley, to his first IPO at 32. Tech blogs called him the Southern Genius. Forbes called him one of the few. But none of it meant a thing when Naomi got sick. All the algorithms, code, and venture capital couldn't fix failing lungs. Couldn't rewrite time. He exhaled sharply, pushing away from the desk again. He needed air. The estate's back patio was lined with soft amber lighting and wide stone pavers that led to a gazebo and an infinity pool. Beyond that, trees, shadows, the world. As he walked out, a warm breeze met him, carrying the distant scent of magnolia. He rubbed his hands together absently, thinking about the product launch next week, Elijah's science project, his mother's hints about going back to church, then froze. There, just outside the estate gates, near the guard post, was a figure. Slumped. Still. Barely visible in the glow of the security lights. He narrowed his eyes. Jaden, he called, heading toward the intercom. His security lead answered with a buzz. Yes, sir? Someone's out front. On the ground. A woman, I think. A pause. Yes, sir. I saw her about 5 minutes ago. Cameras picked her up near the sidewalk. She hasn't moved. Marcus's voice sharpened. Is she hurt? Hard to tell. Should I call for assistance? I'm coming down. Sir. I said I'm coming. The SUV growled softly as it pulled to the edge of the gate. Marcus drove slowly, headlights low. As he eased to a stop, the woman didn't flinch. Rain had begun to fall in the softest mist, clinging to the air like sadness. She sat curled beneath the awning of the closed cafe across from his property. Her hair, thick and natural, was pulled back with trembling hands. Her skin was the color of coffee with cream, and her cheeks were streaked with old tears and new rain. In her lap lay a white garment bag, soaked at the corners. Wedding dress. He stepped out with his umbrella, approaching slowly. Miss, he said, voice low, controlled. She looked up, eyes wide, rimmed in fatigue. But beautiful. Proud. You all right out here? She blinked like she was waking from a deep sleep. No, she said. Not really. He nodded once. You hungry? A pause. She hesitated, lips trembling just slightly. She nodded. All right then. He extended his hand, his eyes never leaving hers. Let's start there. And in that moment, two strangers, soaked by the same rain, stood on opposite ends of a life neither of them saw coming. But both had been waiting for. Willa held the mug with both hands like it was the only thing tethering her to the earth. It was oversized, matte black, and surprisingly warm against her damp fingers. Inside, a swirl of ginger tea danced with honey. Not chamomile, not peppermint, ginger. Strong, grounding. It made her throat ache in a way that had nothing to do with the tea. She sat on the edge of a cream-colored couch that cost more than her entire studio, muscles tight, posture upright. Her wedding dress, still in its soaked garment bag, lay folded carefully on the marble floor beside her. She hadn't let it out of her sight, even when the butler offered to take it to the laundry room. She simply shook her head once. The living room was massive, 2 stories high, with glass walls that looked out into a landscaped garden framed by tall cypress trees. Every piece of furniture looked like it belonged in a magazine. But despite the beauty, it didn't feel sterile. It felt lived in. A small pair of sneakers lay kicked under the glass coffee table. A Spider-Man plush sat tipped over on the staircase. The faint scent of oxtails lingered in the air, clashing with the eucalyptus from the diffuser in the corner. "Tea okay?" Marcus's voice slid across the room like silk. She looked up. He stood across from her in the open kitchen, sleeves rolled up, black shirt hugging his frame. He didn't move toward her, just leaned on the island like he knew how much space she needed. She nodded slowly. "It's good. Thank you." He gave a small nod back, then glanced at the stairs behind him. Elijah's down for the night. Granny read him 2 stories and gave him strict instructions not to sneak snacks. "Granny," she asked. "My mother stays here a few nights a week to help with him. She'll be here in the morning. And she's direct. Just a heads up." Willa gave a small breath of a laugh, the first one that didn't feel forced. "You didn't have to bring me here," she said quietly. "I could have figured something out." "You were sitting on the ground in a wedding dress," he said plainly. "That don't exactly scream, 'I got this.'" She looked down at the mug again. Her fingers tightened. "I didn't want to be a problem." "You're not." Silence stretched between them. Comfortable, but charged. After a moment, he stepped around the island and walked slowly toward her. His movements were smooth but respectful. Measured. He sat in the armchair opposite her, elbows resting on his knees. "Can I ask what happened?" Willa hesitated. She stared at the tea, then the fireplace, then at him. "No," she said. "Not yet." He nodded. No offense taken. They sat like that for a while. The rain outside tapped gently against the tall windows like a lullaby. The fireplace popped quietly in the corner, throwing soft light across the hardwood floor. "Do you believe in starting over?" she asked suddenly. Marcus's eyes met hers. "I believe in starting from where you are," he said. "Same thing, just without the pressure." She closed her eyes, just for a moment. That answer sank into her bones like heat. Later, he showed her to the guest suite on the east wing of the house. The hallway was quiet, the walls lined with framed jazz records and black and white photos of his family. His parents on their wedding day, a younger Marcus in a graduation robe, Naomi holding a tiny Elijah on her hip. He didn't speak as they walked. He just opened the door to the room and flicked on the light. It was warm, golden. The bed was large and dressed in soft cream linens. A vase of fresh flowers sat on the side table. She knew, instinctively, that this room was always ready, for whoever needed it. "You got your own bathroom through there," he said, pointing gently. "Closet's empty. Towels are clean. If you need anything, I'm just down the hall." She turned to face him. Her voice was low. "Why are you doing this?" Marcus looked at her, then away. He rubbed the back of his neck. "I don't know," he admitted. "Maybe because I know what it's like to have everything fall apart, and still need to eat. Still need a place to sleep. Still need someone to say you're not crazy for falling apart in the first place." Willa swallowed hard. "Thank you," she whispered. He met her gaze again, holding it this time. "You're safe here, Willa. No pressure. No expectations. Just rest." She gave a single nod, but it carried weight. As he turned to leave, she paused him. "Marcus?" "Yeah." She hesitated. "Your house is beautiful, but it doesn't feel cold. It feels like a home." He gave a faint smile, the kind that didn't quite reach the eyes. "That's 'cause of Elijah," he said. "He fills in the cracks." Then he walked away, leaving the door slightly ajar. Willa stood in the middle of the room, holding the weight of the day in her hands. She looked around once more, at the warmth, the silence, the softness of a place she didn't expect to find. Then she set her wedding dress on the bed. And for the first time in 2 days, she exhaled. The sun poured into the east wing like honey, golden and slow. Willa stood barefoot in the middle of the sunroom, a space she discovered early that morning when the rest of the house was still asleep. It wasn't just beautiful, it was intuitive. The room curved at the edges, framed by arching windows and pale oak floors that seemed to hum with possibility. Someone had designed this room with intention. A long table sat in the center, empty except for a bowl of lemons and a small stack of notebooks. Light filtered through gauzy curtains that swayed with the breeze, and beyond the glass, a garden in bloom. Lavender, gardenias, tomato vines curling along wooden stakes. Real things, growing things. She hadn't planned to touch the sketchpad. But when she ran her fingers across the cover and felt the soft give of the paper inside, her hands started moving before her brain could protest. A line here, a curve there, a folded hem, a cinched bodice. She was sketching again. Not for a client, not for validation, not for a man who wanted her to make herself smaller. Just for herself. By the time Marcus entered the room, shirt sleeves pushed up, coffee in hand, Willa had already filled 5 pages. He paused in the doorway without speaking, taking in the image. Her in a simple robe, curls tucked up in a satin scarf, pencil in hand, expression furrowed in focus. He hadn't seen someone look that alive in this room since Naomi used to dance here with Elijah on Sunday mornings. "You found the best room in the house," he said softly, stepping in. Willa jumped a little, caught. "I didn't mean to. I can clean it up if this isn't." "Nah," he smiled. "You're good. It's just been a while since somebody used this space for what it was made for." She hesitated. What was it made for? He walked over to the wide windows and looked out. "Naomi wanted it to be a greenhouse at first," he said. "But she turned it into her creative corner instead. She painted back here. Grew herbs. Put Elijah's art on the wall until it looked like a preschool exploded." Willa turned to the wall and noticed the faded tape marks near the baseboards. "She was an artist?" He nodded, then sipped his coffee. "She was a lot of things." A pause. "I'm sorry," she said gently. He didn't flinch. "It was cancer. Quick and cruel. She was gone in 6 months." The silence between them wasn't awkward, it was full. Human. Real. Willa turned back to her sketchbook. "This is the first time I've drawn since the studio closed." "You're good," he said, watching her fingers. "Like, really good." "Thank you," she said, smiling quietly. "I forget sometimes." "You forget because people made you feel like your magic wasn't enough," he said without missing a beat. "Or like it only mattered if it came wrapped in what they approved of." Willa blinked. His words cut deeper than he probably realized. "That's accurate." He leaned against the windowsill and crossed his arms. "You want a space to work?" he asked. She looked at him, cautious. "Like here?" "Yeah. You need a spot to breathe. To create. This house has got plenty of space. But I'm telling you now, if Elijah starts trying to design superhero suits, that's on you." She laughed then. Really laughed. "I'll take my chances." Later that afternoon, she sat at the kitchen island, sketchpad beside her, while Elijah showed her his favorite robot-building game on the tablet. "Okay, so this one has firearms and this one has laser legs," he explained, bouncing in his seat. Willa leaned in. "But how does he sit down if his legs are lasers?" Elijah blinked, stunned. "Miss Willa, you just broke the logic. Good. That's my job. They both laughed. Marcus stood near the sink, watching them. He wasn't trying to, but his eyes kept drifting toward her. Her ease, her kindness, her laughter pouring into the spaces Naomi used to fill. He hadn't realized how much he missed that sound. That evening, Willa stepped outside with a cup of tea and found Marcus already on the patio, sleeves rolled, top button undone, laptop closed. She hesitated at first, but he motioned to the chair next to him. They sat in silence, watching the sky shift from peach to mauve to charcoal. "Do you ever get lonely?" she asked suddenly. Marcus didn't look at her. "Every day." Willa nodded. "Me too." He finally turned to her. His voice was low. "But not tonight." She looked at him, held his gaze, and said nothing. She didn't have to. The call came just after 11 a.m., while Willa was threading tiny silver beads onto a sleeve cuff. "Girl." Darla's voice buzzed from the speaker like a live wire. "Have you been on Instagram?" Willa frowned, still focused on the beadwork. "No, why?" "Oh, okay. So you just casually went viral and forgot to mention it." She looked up. "Wait, what?" "Go check your DMs. I tagged you." Willa set the embroidery aside, walked over to the sunroom desk, and picked up her phone. Notifications hit her like a wave. Mentions. Tags. DMs, comments. She clicked the video first. It was a 30-second clip, recorded from across the sunroom, soft music layered beneath it. Her hands moved over sketches, the sun glowing behind her scarf-wrapped curls. One of her designs, an asymmetrical wedding gown with sheer sleeves and a structured satin bodice, stood on a mannequin beside her, catching the light. The caption read, "Black women are the blueprint. Meet Willa James, an Atlanta-based designer crafting magic out of grace and survival." Posted by Langston and Company, Marcus's lifestyle brand. Willa's breath caught. The account had nearly 500,000 followers, and the video had already hit 86,000 views in 3 hours. She opened her messages. A blue checkmark. Then another. A stylist from LA. A bridal boutique in Brooklyn. A Black-owned magazine asking for an interview. A DM from a certain Grammy-winning R&B singer saying, "Sis, I need a dress." Her knees gave slightly as she lowered into the chair. "Marcus," she said that afternoon, standing at the edge of his home office, hands folded, nerves tight. He looked up from his laptop. "Hey, you okay? You posted a video of me." He closed the screen slowly, sensing the tension. "I did. I should have asked. I saw you working and thought, people need to see this." Her eyes searched his. "You didn't think to ask because?" He stood up, crossing the room carefully. "Because it didn't feel like promoting you. It felt like honoring you. And I figured if you hated it, I'd take it down." Willa took a breath. "I don't hate it." He waited. "I just don't know if I'm ready." "That's fair. But maybe I've waited long enough." By the end of the week, 2 things were true. Willa James was officially back. Peace, as she had come to know it, was changing shape. Boxes of fabric began arriving daily, linen, organza, raw silk in bold tones. Elijah helped her carry them in, pretending each package was a treasure chest. "Miss Willa," he said one morning, "are you famous now?" She laughed. "Nah, just visible." He nodded like he understood more than he should. "Don't forget us when you're on TV." "I could never," she said, kissing the top of his curls. But with attention came pressure. She received a call from a bridal retailer who'd once refused to carry her line. "We're loving your comeback arc," the rep said cheerfully. "Let's chat collab?" Willa smiled politely and hung up. At night, she found herself restless, overwhelmed by choice and the fear that her success was still tethered to Marcus's name. Every headline said the same thing. Designer rescued by tech billionaire. Rescued. As if she'd been passive. As if she hadn't walked through fire to get here. One night, after Elijah went to bed, she stood out on the patio, glass of red wine in hand, eyes fixed on the stars. Marcus joined her quietly. "You've been distant," he said. "I've been thinking. About if any of this would have happened without you." He looked at her. "You mean without me pressing upload?" Yeah, that. The room. The space. The silence. The safety. I didn't pull myself up from the ashes. You carried me out. I opened the door. You walked through it. She sipped the wine, then looked at him. Do you ever wonder if you're helping someone, or if they're just building their next chapter on your back? Marcus set his glass down. Walked closer. I don't care what part one play in your story, Willa. Just don't leave me out of the ending. That hit harder than she expected. She looked at him then, not as the man who rescued her, but as the one who had stayed. Quietly. Consistently. You're not a footnote, she whispered. You're the margin I didn't know I needed. They stood in silence, side by side. The world buzzed on outside. The dress orders stacked up. Interviews loomed. Old ghosts crept in. But in that moment, on a quiet stone patio under southern stars, none of it mattered. Because for the first time in a long, long while, she felt real. And rooted. The first headline dropped at 8:12 a.m. Bride dumped for her weight finds billionaire love. Ex-fiancé speaks out. The Gilded Peach, Atlanta. Willa blinked at her phone. She read it once. Twice. Then a third time, like it would read differently if she stared hard enough. Darla called before she could even finish the article. Girl, you see it? I'm looking at it now. He said you catfished him with your angles, and that your lifestyle wasn't compatible with a high-value man. Darla's voice was tight, disgusted. The man wore boat shoes with ankle socks, Willa. Let's be serious. Willa didn't laugh. Her hands were trembling. He gave them a photo, she whispered. A photo of me. In the dress. The morning of the wedding. Yeah. He leaked your pain and called it content. By noon, it was everywhere. Talk shows picked it up. Social media ran with it. The comments ranged from cruel to sympathetic to downright surreal. Some users defended her. He left her over her size, and now he's mad she glowed up with a billionaire? Sit down, sir. Others attacked her. Gold digger vibes. She's just lucky she got saved. She hadn't left the Langston estate in days. Elijah's school sent her flowers. Marcus's mother brought over pound cake and told her, don't let the devil's whisper outsing your own voice. But it was Marcus who found her in the sunroom that night, sitting cross-legged on the floor, a gown in her lap, her phone screen cracked from where she'd dropped it earlier. You okay? He asked gently. She looked up, raw. Do I look okay? No. She appreciated the honesty. I didn't ask for this, she said. I never wanted to be anyone's redemption story. Marcus crouched down across from her. You're not. You're your own story. She looked away. They think you saved me. He leaned forward. No. You saved me. You brought life back into this house, Willa. Into Elijah. Into me. You made this place feel like home again. Let them say what they want. You and I, we know the truth. She swallowed hard. I want to tell my story, she said. Not for Rick. Not for the trolls. But for the girl still crying in a wedding dress thinking she's too much of everything and not enough of anything. Then do it, Marcus said, voice steady. On your terms. 2 days later, Willa walked into a local studio wearing a black jumpsuit, gold hoops, and heels sharp enough to cut steel. She looked into the camera and didn't blink once. The interviewer, a well-known black journalist named Alana Rhodes, smiled at her warmly. You ready? She asked. Willa nodded. I was born ready. I just forgot for a while. The red light came on. Alana opened with kindness. Willa, tell us what happened the day the world thinks you were left behind. Willa breathed in and told everything. How she met Rick. How she ignored her gut. How she shrank to fit his version of simple. How she made her own dress because she couldn't trust anyone else to see her beauty. She didn't cry. She didn't apologize. She said, he left me at the altar, yes. But I didn't stay there. Alana leaned in. And what happened next? Willa smiled softly. I found a child who saw me before I saw myself. A man who opened a door with no expectations. And I found my own voice, buried beneath years of silence. I didn't get saved. I got seen. The segment aired that evening. By midnight, it had over 2 million views. Marcus watched it from the living room, Elijah curled beside him, fast asleep. When Willa came in, he stood up. "You were brilliant," he said. She took off her earrings slowly, her hands still trembling. "I was scared," she admitted. "But I did it anyway." He walked to her, gentle. "That's what courage is." She looked up at him. "It's louder now. Everything's louder." He tucked a curl behind her ear. "Then let's get louder, too." And that night, for the first time, Willa didn't sleep in the guest wing. She slept in the master suite, between quiet strength and safety. Not because she needed shelter, but because she'd finally chosen to stay. The smoke was thick, too thick to be real. Willa blinked, disoriented, the scent of burning fabric clinging to her nostrils, sharp and acidic. For a full 3 seconds she thought it was a dream. Then came the sound. Sirens. And Darla's voice on the phone, frantic, choked. "Willa, baby, I'm so sorry. It's the boutique." Something sparked in the wiring. "We don't have the whole story yet, but it's gone." Gone. 3 hours earlier, she'd been laughing in the kitchen with Elijah, icing cookies with too much cinnamon and not enough structure. Marcus had just walked in from a board meeting, loosened his tie, kissed her forehead. Normal. Safe. Now she stood across the street from her storefront, what had been her sanctuary, her studio, her rebirth, and watched black smoke curl into the gray Atlanta sky. The fire was out, but the damage was done. The roof had collapsed. The custom gowns she'd designed for her comeback collection were ashes. The lace from Senegal, the silk she handpicked from a small black-owned supplier in LA, the wall of sketches she'd framed for inspiration, gone. All of it, gone. Willa didn't cry at first. She just stood, arms wrapped around herself, silent. Then Marcus's hand found hers. And she broke. Not loud. Not theatrical. Just a sharp inhale that shattered her ribcage from the inside. She leaned into him, let her body fold, let the grief hit all at once. His arms wrapped around her like armor. Elijah reached up and grabbed her hand. "I'll help you build a new one," he whispered. She nodded, unable to speak. That night, the house was quiet. Too quiet. Elijah had fallen asleep on the couch waiting for a movie that never got played. Marcus's mother had made gumbo and left it in the fridge. The Langston estate, usually humming with energy, was hushed, grieving in its own way. Willa sat on the floor of the sunroom. It still smelled like lavender and graphite. She was barefoot, wearing an old tee of Marcus's that draped off one shoulder. Her hands moved without thinking, threading beads, scraps, whatever she had left. A rhythm to remind herself she was still alive. Marcus entered quietly, barefoot too, shirt unbuttoned at the collar. His face was tight. Not angry, worried. "You haven't eaten." She didn't look up. "Not hungry." He sat across from her, mirroring her posture. Silence stretched between them. "I failed," she said finally. Her voice didn't shake. It was flat. Matter of fact. "No, you didn't." She looked up then, eyes sharp. "Everything I've worked for. Everything I rebuilt. It's gone, Marcus." He didn't flinch. "It's not gone. It's changed. That studio didn't make you. You made that studio." Willa exhaled slowly, pressing her palms to her knees. "I don't know if I can do it again." Marcus hesitated. Then he said something she hadn't heard from him before. "I'm scared too." That stopped her. He looked down, then back at her. "I lost Naomi. I lost the idea that I'd ever feel whole again. Then you showed up, in a damn wedding dress, and I started to hope. And that scared me." Her throat tightened. "I keep thinking, if this ends, I don't know if I can survive losing again." She whispered, "Then don't lose me." His eyes met hers. A pause. Then don't run." It started to rain. Light at first, tapping on the glass roof of the sunroom like fingertips. They sat there, watching it together. When the thunder rolled, low and distant, Marcus reached for her hand. Willa let him take it, threading her fingers through his slowly, like a promise. "I'm not who I was when I got here," she said softly. "Good," he replied. "Neither am I." They didn't kiss. They didn't need to. They just sat there, in the sunroom, in the rain, in the aftermath, holding hands on a floor neither of them planned to share. And in the quiet, the fire behind them, the storm outside them, they knew. This was what it meant to stay. The garden bloomed like it knew something sacred was happening. Soft jazz drifted through the warm Georgia air, Coltrane, low and sultry, mingling with the scent of magnolias and sweetgrass. White folding chairs lined the Langston Estates' east lawn in gentle rows. Guests wore linen and laughter. Darla cried twice before the ceremony even started. And at the end of the aisle, Elijah stood holding a bouquet that was almost too big for his hands. Willa stood just beyond the hedges, heart pounding, hand resting against the smooth silk of her gown. Not ivory, not white, rose, deep rose, the color of a sunrise after a long storm, the color of self-love, of healing, of everything she thought she had to erase to be accepted, and now wore like a crown. The dress hugged her unapologetically. Curves, hips, softness. She had sewn it herself. Every pleat, every hem, every intentional fold said, "I am not hiding." The veil was sheer, embroidered with gold thread and tiny black pearls, a nod to her roots, her boldness, and her grief. She wore her hair natural, full and regal, twisted up into a high puff that defied gravity. Her lips were painted wine dark. Behind her, Darla squeezed her hand. "You good, sis?" Willa exhaled. "Not just good," she said. "Ready." When she stepped into view, the entire lawn fell quiet. Marcus turned, eyes locking on her like the world narrowed to a single frame. He looked at her the way no one ever had. Not like she was something to fix or shrink, but like he was witnessing someone walk fully into herself. Elijah grinned up at her as she reached him. "You look like a queen," he whispered. She smiled. "I am one." He took her hand and walked her down the aisle. Slowly, proudly. The boy who once found her crying in a borrowed guest room now beamed like he was escorting royalty. Because he was. The officiant spoke with reverence. "Today we don't just witness a union. We witness a return. To self. To truth. To family." Marcus took her hands in his, warm and steady. "I don't want perfect," he said, voice deep low. "I want real. And I want you." Willa blinked back tears. "You didn't save me," she said, smiling through them. "You saw me. And that saved me more than anything else ever could." When they kissed, it wasn't cinematic, it was quiet. Gentle. Knowing. A kiss between two people who had already lived 100 lifetimes apart, and were finally choosing the same one. At the reception, held under string lights and laughter, Elijah stood on a wooden crate to give a toast. "My mom," he began, voice shaking just a little. "She didn't grow me in her belly. But she grew me in her heart." He paused, smiled at her. "She makes pancakes and makes me laugh and made my dad believe in happiness again. She's not the mom I had. She's the mom I needed." The crowd fell silent, weeping openly. Willa walked over and hugged him to her chest, both of them holding on a little too long. No one told them to stop. At the end of the night, as the sky faded into stars, Willa stepped away from the music and the lights and walked barefoot into the garden. She stood in the middle of it, rose gown flowing like wind, and looked up. Not to ask for anything, but to say thank you. To the silence. To the ache. To the version of herself who once sat in a wedding dress on a cold sidewalk, believing she had nothing left. She had no idea then. That life would rewrite the ending. And this time, she'd be the one holding the pen. We have come to the end of the story. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more interesting stories.